African Development Bank in 2017. I was working for both Africa 50 and the African Development Bank for the first year and a half of being there. And then since then have been working solely for the African Development Bank in the private sector, which deals with all types of capital that we provide to the private sector arm of the bank.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I'm now going to move on to the questions. Thank you all for your introduction. And we're going to start off with Belle, if you don't mind. And we want to know what led you to your career in Parliament, because we know, from researching about you, of course, that, you studied as an undergraduate and then you moved, you did the GDL. So we wanted to know how you pivoted into politics and perhaps why you chose politics as opposed to pursuing a career in law.
Thank you very much. Well, I started off actually studying the sciences. I studied biomedical sciences with ethics and philosophy of science. And the plan when I left sixth form was to go into that field and potentially maybe work with the Nuffield Council of Bioethics. At the time that I was going to university, they had just cloned Dolly the sheep. The first mammal to be cloned, and there were loads of different discussions around the ethics of that, and what the future of genetic technologies were going to be, and they didn't really have many people that were trained in both fields, just either someone who's trained in the sciences or the ethics. So they were really promoting that course heavily. And teachers at school, there was at the time, talk of potentially going into law, but what I was advised is not to actually study a degree in law. I was told that even if I did think about going into law, that the conversion was the best way, and actually getting a good degree in something else was a firm basis. And I did that, and whilst I was at university in Bradford, I got very heavily involved in politics, a lot of anti-racist campaigning, and actually it began with challenging the deportation of one of my fellow international students in the African Caribbean Society, who was being unfairly treated, and actually was eventually sent back to Kenya. So I got involved in student politics, but I didn't think that politics was for me, so I continued to pursue my education. I went on to do medical law and ethics as a master's degree, still being distracted by politics at the time, and still very heavily involved in that. And I had a full-time role at the National Union of Students representing Black students across the country. I went on to work in some other campaigns, and I did again start to think more and more about what I was going to do in terms of profession. And my dad was very much like, all of this campaigning, when are you going to get a real job? And I thought about what could be a real job that still involved a lot of campaigning. And I actually looked to law. Obviously, there are so many different areas of law, but some of the best campaigners I knew were actually lawyers. And I thought I could still be a troublemaker, still get a job that would make my parents leave me alone slightly. So I went on to study law. And whilst I was studying law, as everybody knows, it's extremely expensive. And I had run out of money. But at the time, Diane Abbott, who was the first Black woman elected to Parliament, through my different campaigns, I'd come to know her. And I actually went into her office just to cover for somebody who wasn't feeling too well. And I was there for nearly 10 years, working in a variety of different roles until my actual constituency came up for the Labour Party. And I thought, actually, why not? After all of this experience, why shouldn't I put myself forward? And I did practice some immigration law during that time, but eventually it all came down to politics.
Fantastic. And you're doing a fantastic job. So we're happy that you
Thank you.
Politics. Fantastic. And Yemisi, can I ask you the same question? What led you down your path to your career?
So for me, my parents told me that I've been saying I wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 5. So I think it was a natural for me. And I think it was just because I was always very curious, asking lots of questions. So, I was probably feeding from the atmosphere, because everyone was saying you'll make a good lawyer, even at that age. But interestingly, after I finished my degree, I had been actually applying for training contracts and didn't get one. So I went on to do my master's. And while I was there, I then got this opportunity to work in investment banking. So, like I said, I actually, and at that time, I actually thought I had pivoted. I'd done a degree and a master's in law, but I really thought I had pivoted, and I went into investment banking. But I think I quickly realized that it wasn't, investment banking wasn't what I really wanted to do, because deep down, that desire to study law was always there. And so I did that for just under 2 years, and then went and qualified, went and did the qualification in Nigeria for the Nigerian Law School. So I'd done my degree, my master's in England. So I then went to Nigeria, did the law school, and then went back to England and did the LPC, and then did the training contract. So it was a bit of an unconventional way, but I got around to it in the end.
Yeah. I find a lot of people have the same story. It's not quite straightforward. You know, people try different areas and different paths, and just find their way back.
Exactly. So
thank you. And Thelma,
came back with a detour.
And Thelma, can I ask you the same question?
Well, I would say my path to law was more serendipitous. Unlike Yemisi, I don't recall that when I was a child, I wanted to be a lawyer. I considered other things, including biochemistry and even acting, but law was not part of it. By the time I finished my undergraduate degree, I had an offer to join the marketing team of a brewery for national service. So the plan was to finish my national service and then pursue a career in marketing and brand management. But the period from when school was done to when the role was to start was about 3 or 4 months. And I told my friend that I was bored, and he said to me, well, he has an ex-colleague who had just set up a law firm in his building where he worked. So maybe I should go talk with the guy, and I can while away the time until I have to go and start my role at the brewery. And so that's how in May 2006, I met Elikem Nitifafa Kwenye here, who had just set up his 2-month-old Oxford and Bowman solicitors, and began my love affair with the business and practice of law.
Fantastic. I actually interned there, and I remember you, but you don't remember me, unfortunately. Back in 2013 or something like that, but thank you for sharing anyway. It's good to know your journey. And can I ask the same question to Nania?
Well, so growing up, actually, my father knew what I wanted to do, because whenever I would see a career woman being interviewed on television, I would say to him, I want to be like that woman. And this ranged from entrepreneurs, bankers, CEOs, politicians. And so my father always thought that I was very unsettled about what I wanted to be in future. But it wasn't until when I grew up, looking back, that I realized that all I wanted to be was a successful woman. And so that's how my journey actually started out. It was with a desire to be successful. And, you know, I think sometimes as women, we are afraid to even desire things or be ambitious. And in doing that, we automatically place a ceiling on ourselves. So I think that was the first thing that I think I consciously cultivated the habit of desiring success. And as I grew up, I remember my mother telling me, oh, you're going to be such a fantastic lawyer in future, you know, law is for you. And I really don't know why she used to say that. I know she had wanted to be a lawyer, but it never happened for her. So maybe somehow she wanted her only daughter to also be a lawyer. But I think she simply brainwashed me into thinking that I was going to be a good lawyer. That was the best career for me. And so I found myself, you know, longing and wishing and starting out, you know, my career in that path. But at the time, you couldn't take law as a first degree in Ghana. So I actually did take a degree in political science and philosophy. And then when I finished with that, I went to law school. But I even remember that when I finished my degree in political science, I told my mom that, you know what, I'm not sure law is the thing for me. I hear that it's so difficult. Everyone keeps complaining about it. All those I know doing law are very miserable. I'm not sure I want to do law. I mean, she wouldn't stand for that. And I'm glad she didn't, because I went to do law and I thought it was fantastic. It wasn't that as difficult as people had made it out to be. So I think for me, the lesson for me, one is, being ambitious and having a desire. And two, there's great power in positive influence. And for that, I think my mom played a key role in getting me to where I am today.
Fantastic. That's so good to hear. And Felicia, can we hear from you?
Yes, I mean, hearing everybody, I am actually one that took a very linear path to the career. So the only opportunity for me to not take a linear path would have been in my choice of degree. So I always wanted to do a history degree, but I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. But my Ghanaian parents said they didn't know how they could explain to their friends that their daughter was doing history because that wasn't going to take them anywhere. So I had to do the law degree. So it was law degree, trading contract, LPC trading contract. And I was on that I basically was on that wagon for quite a while until a couple of years ago when I sort of at least stepped off, the private practice route. So yeah, I would say that I've probably taken the most textbook approach to the career, but
Fantastic. And just keeping with you in terms of, you said you made that transition from private practice to in-house. What would you say are some of the challenges were making that transition?
Well, the thing is, I personally never had partnership aspirations even when I started my training contract. And when I moved on to Millbank, my plan was to, go to a US firm, cash out after 3 years, do something else more interesting. But, life gets in the way, and I was there for so I was there for a total of 10 years almost. Moving into in-house, I think mine is just a little bit different because I moved straight from private practice to a startup. So I completely missed the infrastructure of a law firm. Things that you take for granted. From when I was a trainee, I had a secretary. There was a print room. If I needed something printed, I'll email somebody and then it will arrive at my desk. Just somebody, there was always somebody that you could just knock on their door and ask a legal question. That's been quite different sort of in my own in-house experience, just because it's been a startup. But I definitely do not miss those daily timesheets, billing my time to every 6 minutes. I do not miss that. But in terms of challenges, I would say, yes, it's just missing that law firm infrastructure. And also you go from being a specialist, to being a complete generalist, it was project finance. Now anything can land on my desk, right? From disputes to commercial transactions to employment to actual finance and even within finance, I've been more used to the debt, but I'm doing a bit more equity. So it's a whole array. So I've gone from being quite specialist to becoming a bit of a jack of all trades. But that's also been good for me because it's given me a lot more variety than I ever had, because of the nature of, if you're specializing in a law firm. But yeah, it's been a mixed bag, but overall, I would say it's definitely the positives have outweighed, missing that, the perks that come with being in a law firm, shall I say.
I completely understand. And how would you overcome the challenges, when you face difficulties in your current job right now?
I think you can never underestimate the power of a network. I always know that there is somebody, whether it's in my organization or within, my friends or people I've worked with, that I can lean on and ask for advice, counsel, help, anything. That's really what I found to be the most effective way of overcoming challenges. So if it's sort of company specific internally, make sure you make relationships with people that are ready, willing, and able to help in the organization. And then outside of your organization, you already have your trusted friends, etc. So I would say that that's definitely been a key part of me being able to you know, overcome difficulties that come with working generally. There is nothing new under the sun. Whatever you're going through, somebody's been through it before. It's just finding that person and finding out how they overcame it. It always helps.
Thank you so much for that. Nanya, can I ask you the same question? I mean, clearly you've done exceedingly well in your career. It'd be very interesting to know how you've overcome challenges that you face, and what sorts of challenges have you faced as a woman in your industry?
Yeah, I think the first thing I will say is that I sort of never went into law, you know, my law career thinking I wanted to be a partner and I wanted to do this and that and that. I think for me, becoming a partner was a natural progression, but you know, the journey there is where the real growth, challenges and everything happened. So when I started out as a lawyer, my only focus was to be able to make an impact. For me, I wanted to be a particular type of lawyer. So I remember going online and looking at profiles of different lawyers, going into legal directories, and then looking at what I would like my peers and clients, you know, what words would I like my peers and clients to use to describe me? And I wrote that down. And it was in the journey of trying to embody those values, those things that I wrote down, that I became a partner. But then it was much more challenging than I thought it would be. I thought it was just simply words on a paper and trying to make sure that I embody that. But along my journey, I realized, I think in my 6th year or 7th year, I was totally burnt out. I didn't enjoy my work. I felt like a machine. I was just going on and on and on. And I needed to change certain things about my career if I wanted to, you know, go along. It wasn't enough for me to simply progress through the ranks. So I think the first thing that I had to do was learning to communicate my value. And that was something that I've always struggled with. If you realize, even with the introduction, when you said we should introduce ourselves, I gave like a very short introduction of myself. Up to now, I still find it difficult to communicate my value. But I think that's one of the things that, you know, as a woman, you really need to change your mindset about. It's not about putting the spotlight on yourself or bragging. It's simply communicating your competence, communicating your capabilities, communicating your accomplishments. You just need to think of it as a statement of fact, nothing more than that. So that was one thing that I really needed to overcome to move me to the next level. Another thing that I had to overcome was I had to learn to be fearless. I think I was naturally a very cautious person, trying to, you know, paint within the circle and do everything as I was supposed to do. But then I learned that that really wasn't going to help me to stand out. I needed to be able to take risks. I needed to be able to do hard things. And I think that's one thing that I really started doing, taking on risks, doing hard things, being comfortable outside of my comfort zone. That's what really helped me to rise. And another challenge was the imposter syndrome. You know, when you finish doing all of these difficult and hard things and, you know, you actually feel like perhaps you've done something, you start feeling, maybe I don't really deserve to be here, and you start questioning yourself whenever an opportunity comes. And it's funny because you're being fearless and you're taking every opportunity, but at the same time, when you are within the opportunity, you feel like you're not good enough or you're not sufficient. And one of the things that my mom always used to tell me was that, well, whether you deserve to be there or not, you're already there. So make the most of it. And that's one thing I really kept in mind to help me overcome imposter syndrome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yemisi, can we hear from you in terms of challenges you may have overcome in your career?
Yeah, so in terms of challenges for me, I think that the first sort of major one was really that transitioning when I was moving from London to Singapore. So I mean, as a training, so I'd spent sort of the first, I think, 6 or 7 years of my legal career in London, and then after that I took a year and a half out, and then I moved on to Singapore. And as it was a very new sort of environment and culture for me, and I think that there's the challenge was I was trying to do transactions within Southeast Asia, but I was also, because I had built an African practice for myself in London, I really wanted to continue doing that in Asia, and so I was heading the Africa desk of my firm, sort of the Africa desk for my firm in Asia, and having to basically convince the Asians about opportunities in Africa, was huge. You walk into offices. I used to walk into offices of various companies in Singapore and try and convince them about the African story, and it was an uphill task. I think things are a lot more. I mean, this was from about 2014 to 2017. And of course, times have moved, because, at the time they were like, oh, we're seeing a lot of money moving from China into Africa. And so I'm sure you can just come and facilitate that. But yeah, no, that was difficult. I mean, in terms of overcoming that particular challenge, I guess it was just sort of like, getting what I would call allies. So anybody that I knew, any Asian that I knew had either lived or worked in Africa, sort of getting them on side, getting even my bosses, sort of to support the cause, and try and sort of convince them that there were opportunities in that. I think the other one is then, making that transition from just like, Felicia was talking about, in terms of moving from private practice to in-house. I think for me, it was less about the fact that, I didn't have as much infrastructure. It was just sort of how the infrastructure worked, because the first time I was coming in-house was also my first time then moving to work on the African continent. And, even as a lawyer who's coming from, or from private practice, you're sort of used to sort of getting everything, sort of going into the nitty-gritties, because you're doing sort of less deals and you're super specialized. I was also sort of focused on project finance, but in-house, you're indeed a jack of all trades. You're doing a lot more, and you're doing way more deals, right? If in private practice you were doing, say, 4 or 5, here you have about 15 or 16, right? So it's more breadth and depth, and you need to understand that the experience that you had earlier is really just preparing you to learn to supervise and spot issues, right? So it's not, because obviously you're hiring and sort of supervising external counsel, and your job is to know what to look out for, and to be able to also communicate that to your internal clients, the commercial team, as well as whatever other clients that they have. So I think sort of making that transition was very important to me, and I completely agree that really having people to ask questions, building that network, having people internally, because sometimes people can, especially in in the environment that you can come in from private practice and feel like, oh, I'm coming from private practice, I'm at the cutting edge, I know everything, and then you come in because people that have been in-house, but you learn very quickly that no, there's a lot you don't know, you're learning, and you really just buckle down and learn. So I think those are definitely two challenges, and I think the other one is one that I'm constantly dealing with every day.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And Belle, it'll be interesting to hear how you overcome your challenges as a member of Parliament, I guess you're under a lot of public scrutiny, quite a lot, so it will be interesting to know how you balance or overcome your challenges.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of public scrutiny. I think when I was a staff member, even a senior staff member, I think one of the things that's followed me definitely from them is people taking me seriously, because I'm a younger woman, and actually some colleagues that were even perhaps older, well, younger than me, but didn't appear so. I can't help the fact that I'm a black woman, good genes, shit butter. If you come across younger, people want to talk to you in a certain way, and that happened a lot. I remember at first I would go to places with Diane Abbott, and people would ask me if I was her daughter, if I was her niece. And I thought to myself, why couldn't I possibly be her political advisor? And what self-respecting person walks around with their grown daughter in the middle of the working day? People didn't believe I was a woman. Even I would email people with my name, Belle Riberio-Addy. They'd email me back saying, Bill, hi, good morning, Bill. Thank you for your email. And I was so confused. Obviously, they knew I worked for a black woman, but because it was a particularly senior role, they were confused by that. And it wasn't until I actually went to an event where I met a black woman who was expecting me. She said, do you know what it was? I thought you were a man, a white man, from your email. So loads of different things like that. And even just simply being confused with my other colleagues, because there are few and far between of us. And that added pressure of making sure you don't mess up, because you know what, they're probably going to think it's somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's it. You always have to be on. You always have to be more conscious than some of your other colleagues are, because if you make a mistake, they are on you. If somebody else makes a mistake, it's usually brushed under the carpet. And sometimes you don't even have to make a mistake for people to be on you. So yeah, definitely the public scrutiny is a massive issue, but I suppose I deal with it by making sure that what I'm doing is always rooted in what my constituents have said, by being very careful about my language, but also I suppose not being cowed by some of the public perceptions. I think of the negative perceptions in the media of black women in public life. I suppose you've got to have quite thick skin. And that's important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Thelma, you can share some of your the issues that you face in your career today and how you've overcome them.
I think for me, what I considered a challenge was really deciding what I wanted to do. I have a lot of practice management experience, and I also had my law degree. And at some point in my career, I was asked to choose between law and business, and it was a very hard thing for me to do. I chose business services, and so by the time I left ENS, I was head of operations for the Ghana office. But at some point, I needed to do some introspection and decide. I'd gone and gotten myself an MBA, thinking that it would give me an option in case law doesn't work. But you can't always go through life with a plan B, expecting that plan A will not work. And so for me, I go back to a dream that Elikem shared with me the first time I met him, about the kind of law firm he was trying to build and what got me excited about law in the first place. And it's been a North Star for me and helps me in deciding that, you know, instead of going into commercial, I will stay with law and I'll do it properly. So I think we all go through phases in life. Law can be tedious, it can be tiring. Like Lania said, it's very easy to get burnt out. It's very difficult sometimes to keep motivating yourself and showing up and being present and doing it. And so every now and then you have to have some kind of introspection to decide, is this it? Am I doing it right? And being a Keystone for me has rekindled the love for law, because Keystone has been around for about 7 or so years now, but it still has a startup feel to it. And I know, because I feel it, that we are building something really special in our firm, and waking up every day to come to it, it gives me excitement because I know that I'm doing something meaningful. So I guess for anybody who is going through, is this law for me or it's not, it's normal, because I think every now and then the best of us go through it. But keep your dream in mind, whatever that is, and rely on it when it comes to some of these difficult moments in your career.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. And, what do you think do you think there are specific challenges facing women in law today?
Well, so what I've noticed in my experience in both practice management and law is, even in law school, I think there were more women than men in our classes. And in the first few years of training, there are more female associates than men, in my experience. I could be wrong. But by the time they're moving to senior associates and to partner, or to even head of legal in organizations and all, I don't know where all the women go. And it's a concern for me. So I think it's an important question to ask. I know that the hours can be tedious. I know that sometimes people struggle with balancing work and life, and maybe at some points we decide that it's not for us. But that's one thing that I've noticed. And I think for those of us who are gatekeepers, whether you are a female or a male gatekeeper, you need to be very deliberate in allowing women into the rooms, hold the door open for them. If you have to push them, please push them. If the table is not big enough, break it down. Let's build a bigger one, and let's make room for all of us, because the perspectives of women in conversation, in policy, is so crucial. We make up about half of the population of the world, and if our voices are not heard, if we are marginalized, that's a huge group of people who are not being considered and who are not being fairly represented.
Absolutely. And I'll ask the same question to Nanya. I don't know if you share Telma's sentiment as well.
Yeah, I agree completely with Thelma. I mean, I am a disputes lawyer, so I do litigation, and the truth is we started out with more female litigators than male litigators, and halfway through the career, 5th, 6th year, almost everyone is gone. Most of the women go in-house. The few that are left are struggling. It's difficult to balance, the work-life balance is difficult. And I have to say that, I mean, being a lawyer, and particularly being a disputes lawyer, I think it takes a lot of perseverance, that you're not completely in control of your time. Sometimes you plan something for one day and you're served with an application and your whole day turns upside down, and you have court and all of those things. But I mean, I think the major thing I would say from my perspective is work-life balance. If you have a family like I have, and I have 2 boys, it's very difficult to balance your work with your family. And it's something that you need to be deliberate and intentional about. And if you want to have or hold on to your career, you need to make an extra effort to hold on to that. And I think that's one of the main reasons why a lot of women sort of fall off along the way, is because of family commitments. You take time off work to have a baby, you come back, there's so many things that can get in the way. But for me, the way I've always looked at it is that it's just a period of time. I remember when I was having my second son, I almost gave up, because but one of the things that helped me was realizing it was just a period in the journey. Law is the kind of practice where if you are not visible, you're not able to get ahead as quick. There are a lot of male lawyers who are good, but they might not be as good as the female lawyers, but because they are visible. I think for a lot of women, sometimes because of the way we are socialized, we're quite happy to stay in the background and do all the fantastic work. And sometimes others even take credit for our work. But I think one of the things I keep echoing is that even if you don't enjoy the spotlight, it's important for you to be there because you serve as a visual representation for other women. You need fantastic. And in this modern age, if no one knows you're a fantastic lawyer, you are not fantastic. Full stop. Doesn't matter if you actually are. So I think one of the things women need to deliberately cultivate is trying to be visible. We know we are very busy with family and work and everything, but make time to do things outside of your regular work because you're going to learn a lot of things that you otherwise won't learn doing your, your regular work. And one of the things I also say is that it's like a muscle. Once you start, exercising it, it becomes stronger and stronger. And being visible is not so much of a chore anymore. I'm naturally someone who likes to be at the background, who likes to blend. But when I got to the point where I felt burnt out and I was unhappy and I felt like perhaps I needed to move away from the law. At that time, I felt like it can't get any worse than this. So that was when I pushed myself to be a bit more visible because I felt at this point, there really isn't isn't much to lose, and if it doesn't work out, I'll simply consider something else. And it did work out for me. So I want to encourage, the ladies, don't give up, be visible.
It's well known that when men apply for jobs, half the time they don't have the qualifications that they need, but they're men, so they're just going to put themselves forward. And we as women often sit there and go meticulously through what perhaps is being asked for and think, oh, maybe we're not quite up to the scratch, and when we can't quite meet these specifications, and we'll often hold ourselves back when actually a lot of the time we are better. We are better qualified. We're probably better placed to handle it, but we're just not pushing ourselves forward. So that I think is definitely the issue, and people just generally questioning our competence, which is really unfair because it's based on our genders, but based on our race, it's based on how we look, and very, very, I think, outdated perceptions on what women can and can't do. But I hope as history has proved that women can do absolutely anything. And actually, if we were in charge of more things, they would be better. I think about a country like Rwanda, and I was there recently challenging, even though we were challenging this refugee deal that they've done, have women leading them, and that has meant that a country who not so long ago had a really awful genocide and something which completely overturned their country has gone leaps and bounds in terms of development, in terms of their economy. And I can put that all down to women leading the charge. So I think it's really sad when we do hold ourselves back, but it's as much society's perception of us also having a bit of a grip on us and not allowing us to believe that we can be the leaders that we're meant to be.
That's it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Yemisi, you got anything you'd like to add to that as well?
I think a lot of the issues have been said. I think one thing, the question reminded me of when I was when I first started my career in investment banking, and I sat with an older female. I think she was a director or partner, but just really senior, and I was just a young analyst, and I just sat with her and said to her at the time that I wanted to discuss sort of more. She was Black. She was a Black female senior woman, and I looked at her as a role model. And I remember saying to her, talking about more kind of ethnic, or should I say, sort of more minority type issues. And she was saying that when the more senior you get, it's no longer about whether you're Black or white or whatever. It's really about whether you're male or female. And then what she was facing at the time, I remember, was just being the only female in a room with lots of men. And obviously it's been alluded to when we talk about law students being way more female than male. Even in my training contract when I was at Linklaters, the women were more than the men. But then as it goes up, sort of that attrition rate just, of the women is just, is just way out of line. And then you get to the top, and then what you're facing. So I think, I think in terms of issues, they differ depending on how senior you are. I think when you're junior, you face less of the gender issues in terms of just, there's just more, but there's more women than men. I mean, in terms of just, representation. But at the top, that's why the whole conversation about women on boards, having more women on boards, or having, like the FTSE 100 companies, how many of them have women on the boards, or actually in the rooms. You find out that, now when you're looking at, potentially, joining boards and everything, you find that sometimes they specifically ask for women. And I think that it's because of these issues that have been raised, people leaving the profession to get better work-life balance, people sort of like developing, imposter syndrome, which again, I had another conversation, with a very senior man in the investment industry, just talking generally about leadership and imposter syndrome. And interestingly, he was saying that imposter syndrome happens to everybody. I think men are just better at dealing with it, or just pushing it to the side and saying, just like Nania's mom said, it doesn't matter whether you deserve to be here, you're here, what are you going to do with it? Yeah. So I believe that a lot of the issues that come with, the legal profession, it's really more, it's not specific to the legal profession. It's just really because law is intense. So many other intense professions would face the same types of issues, because it's very busy. People would drop off. Women would drop off when they're trying to, be with, because of work-life balance and family issues and all of that. But also us really believing that we can do hard things. We can do those hard things because we don't have to have imposter syndrome. We're able, as able as anybody else. And that, even in terms of representation on boards and the most senior levels, whether it's, even in Parliament, boards, or, any other senior levels that we're all aspiring to, I think it's not sort of a tokenism, right? Where you think, okay, we need 2 women on the board. So now, it's about the fact that we're as equal to the task as anybody else. We can do it, and we should put ourselves forward. We don't always put ourselves forward for things because, we overthink. But I think us really putting ourselves out there and getting our voices heard is what is needed to be done. So yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said.
Fantastic. Felicia, have you got anything to add?
Well, I mean, a lot has been said about the number of women at the entry level. And what I say is this, where, recruitment, retention, promotion of anybody, whether it's women, ethnic minorities, if it is just merit-based, you will see more women. It's as simple as that, right? There is a reason why there are more women entering the legal profession. It's because at that point, at that entry point, it is merit-based. It is based on your results. It is based on, what you've done. I think, and, call me controversial, but the society and the patriarchy has not helped women in the legal profession and many other professions, ultimately. We always talk about work-life balance as being a reason why a lot of women sort of step back. I counter that with, a lot of it is based on societal assumptions on what the women's priorities are or ought to be, right? The moment you become a parent in the legal profession, without making a statement, your bosses have already assumed that you want to work part-time, or that, you want to go home to your kids. So they select you out of opportunities because they think, oh yes, she has a kid at home, so she's not going to want to get involved in this transaction. There are also dads, there are men in the law firms that have children. Nobody talks to them about work-life balance, right? Nobody's talking to the men about work-life balance. They have their kids too. Do they not want to spend time with their kids? Do they not want to rush off and, do that? recruiters, I always find incredible when the moment you hit a certain level of PQE as a woman, when they are approaching you about opportunities, they're always leading with work-life balance. I've never heard of that happen for men, right? Those assumptions are just not there, right? So, you know, there's also the sort of, in the context of law firm, it's law firm culture, right? All the things that one needs to do to get promoted are suited to the male lifestyle, shall I say? You know, oh, let's go and play golf for a whole day. Like, I know women play golf, but I really could not think of anything worse as a way of passing my day than to play golf. But that's where it happens. And, you know, that's when the shoulder taps happen and all of that. So the way the infrastructure is designed is not set up for the majority of women to succeed and get to the top, is what I would say. But we can counter that. And we counter that by showing up every day, right? We counter that by not self-selecting ourselves out. We counter that by making sure that, you know, we exceed expectations and we sort of go against the stereotype, right? And the more of that we do, and, you know, again, when we talk about the gatekeepers, I think as women, the more senior we get, it is incumbent on us, right, to make sure that we do not pull the ladder up from under us, right? We need to make sure that we support other women, because the reality is that whatever it is that we were going through, you know, 5-10 years ago, they're probably going through it now, but they think they're the only one. They're probably afraid to come and talk to you. So we need to have that sort of open door approach when, especially if we have female direct reports, we need to let them know, and we need to sponsor them. We need to champion them as much as possible, go out of our way to make sure that, in the same way men do, it's just that when women do it, it's sort of flagged. But, you know, men do it all the time. This is what they do. And we as women should not, you know, try and say, well, you know, it was difficult for me, so, you know, you need to go through it too. No, our job is to make it easier for other women coming up, because there is no joy whatsoever in being the only in any room. I derive no pleasure from it. You know, you want to be in a room and you want to see others that look like you. You want to see other women being championed. You know, you want to promote them. You want to champion them. You want to mentor them, and also let them know that, you know, ultimately work-life balance, it's a priority, but it's not a women issue. Men should also be seeking work-life balance, frankly. And, you know, if the narrative always makes it a women issue, then it becomes a case of women don't want to work as hard, or women are unwilling to work as hard because, you know, they've got a family and they need to go back home and support the family. But it's not just in the law firm. I mean, if you have kids at school, naturally, it doesn't matter whose name you put on the top, they'll call the mum first if someone's sick, right? Yeah. It's these little things that make sort of the weight on the women, especially if you're, you know, in a high-powered career as well. You know, there are other things outside of the workplace that society is putting all these pressures on you. You know, I remember once my husband made a doctor's appointment, and then the doctor called me. And I was like, I haven't called you. I have no business with you. Call the person that called you, right? Why are you assuming that it, you know, it's the mom? And it's things like that, right? And so I think, as part of just law firms generally and society, is just recognizing that, you know, in everything there's a partnership, right? And women are sort of disproportionately expected to do certain things as well as thrive in the workplace, as well as the fact that it's not actually merit-based when it comes to promotion, because we women have always shown ourselves that if there's a level playing field, we will outdo. Like, we will always outdo, because we are actually capable and we can. But anyway, I've rambled on. All of this is to say that it is challenging, but it can be overcome.
No, that's fantastic. And I think a lot of us completely agree with you. And so thank you for sharing that. Thelma, do you have anything to add to that? I know we've overrun. Thelma's there? Is she there? Oh, I can't see her. Maybe she's dropped off.
I think you need to make Thelma a host so she can put her camera on.
Oh, right. Can she hear me though?
I think.
Okay.
Hi, Stephanie, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yes. I was saying, did you have anything to add?
On challenges women face.
Yeah.
I think it's all been said. I started the conversation, and I think saying it in a different way. Let's just learn to put our hands up for things that come up. I think in line with Nania's on visibility, Belle giving us, space to be who we are. I think just put your hands up, because if you're already at no, you don't lose anything. And if that gets you what you're looking for, then yay for women.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There are quite a few men listening right now, so I'd be quite interested to get their thoughts. But I wanted to know from you, what do you think, what role can men play in contributing to, helping us, whether it's get up the ladder or feel more comfortable at work, and in general, like advocating for women's rights and equality? Do you think, men play a role in that, or should they?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we do know that it's a man's world. And if we are going to have the representation that we need, then we need all the allies that we can get. And so back to the comments on gatekeepers, men need to be a bit more deliberate about giving women space to be heard and to have a say in how things are done. And in terms of law firms, I mean, for instance, in my old firm, under Ghanaian law, women get 3 months maternity leave, but then there was a lot of conversation around it, and it was extended to up to 6 months, depending on a person's level. And things like that, I don't see a man coming up with it. You need women in the room to have that kind of conversation. And so whenever a man has an opportunity to make a decision, they need to intentionally include women, because we always have a different perspective. In Keystone, we have 3 partners, 2 men and I, and they always tell me, like, they'll just say, T, come and give me your perspective. And I always bring something different to it. So men definitely have a role to play. Human sex ratio says we are almost 50-50 men and women. I think men are just marginally more than us, but they control most of the opportunities, most of the resources, and we need them. It's not a competition. It's not a fight. But when you educate a woman, Agri said, it's a whole nation, and the ability to drill it down is easier when it's done with women than with men, because we have the capacity to see things so much more differently than a typical man would.
Absolutely, I agree. And Belle, for you in politics, do you see that dynamic changing in terms of, men and women being treated equally, giving, equal opportunities to enter into your field?
Well, it's not changing as fast as it should change, but it absolutely does have to. As I said, there's certain things that would never be discussed in Parliament in the way that they are unless we had the level of women that we have, and we still don't have enough. And people think that perhaps we're quite progressive as a society because of the laws that we have on gender rights. But actually, when I think about representation, we've only had two female prime ministers. We've actually had 3, but that last one, she didn't last very long. We've had 3 female prime ministers, and under those, the lives of women didn't really improve very much. So we need to think diversity. Absolutely, diversity is key. It's great for us to have people that look like us in spaces, but ultimately representation is going to make the difference. And representation can come from men. As you've heard before, they can advocate for women in a certain way, and it is going to take, I think, some men pushing forward and actually opening that space, and actually sometimes just just shutting up and standing back and allowing women to do certain things for people to recognise our worth in society. So I hope it's going to change, but at the moment it's very, very slow. And we have to be honest about the fact that sometimes it's women even advocating for holding the rest of us back.
Exactly. I've definitely been at workplaces with women like that, unfortunately, so it does happen. And just staying with you, I mean, what would you give to young females today about embarking on a career in politics, or, you know, a professional career where perhaps, you know, it's very male dominated? What advice would you give to them?
I would say get to know other women that are doing it. I think we heard already about how important your network is. And I don't think I would have survived without knowing other women in the profession, other Black women specifically. I would say make sure that you have thick skin and make sure you're prepared to, unfortunately, in the situation where you are in a lower number, to have to work harder than everybody else. Because you're always going to be perceived slightly differently. I know that comes across as quite unfair, but it is a reality of the situation. And, you know, as has also been said before, make sure that you're reaching back for other people, even if it's just experience. I come across so many young Black women, actually, and it's not just people that want to go into politics, but even people that want to study law, looking for work experience in an MP's office. We still very much live in not just a man's world, but a world in which it can sometimes be about who you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not know another perhaps younger Black woman very well, but you know what it is that she's been through. And if you can do something to help out and you're in that space, make sure that you do it, because it does make it better for all of us if there are more of us.
Thank you so much. Very true. And Felicia, have you got anything to add to that in terms of advice you'd give to young females?
Yes, I would say there was a few years ago, actually, I had an International Women's Day meme, and it sort of said that, you know, may we walk with the confidence of the mediocre white man. No offense to white men, but I think we need to give ourselves some credit, right? We need to allow ourselves grace, right? We need to be able to just go and give it a shot because we've got nothing to lose. I would say don't self-select yourself out of anything. You know, if you see an opportunity, go for it because you've got nothing to lose. I can't overstate, as Belle said, you know, the network, because everybody from, you know, your classmates at school to uni to, you know, whatever your intake is, everybody has a part to play potentially in your life and in your direction. So be kind to people, be a nice person, because you know what, when you are applying for jobs, the more senior you get, people are not looking at your CVs. They will just call and say, oh, you worked with so-and-so, what were they like?
Yeah.
That's it. And if they don't have a nice thing to say about you, then the chances are you won't get that role. So, you know, think about how you interact with people, thinking about making sure you maintain relationships, and be sure to not, you know, give yourself grace and don't self-select yourself out of opportunities just because you don't see somebody that looks like you in that role, or you don't think you're good enough, because when it comes down to it, you might surprise yourself.
Thank you so much. And Nania, can we hear from you on this?
I think 3 things from me. Focus on your own journey. A lot of times it's easy for us to sort of look at others and try to replicate their journey. But in truth, you're only your authentic self when you focus on your journey and you become the blueprint. And it's scary and it's difficult, but you need to focus on your own journey. And remember that once you do that, you give others the permission to also do so. And when we have different blueprints, it becomes easier for other women coming in behind us. The second thing I want to say is that it's tough. I wish someone had really told me, you know, at the beginning of my journey, I was struggling so much and I wasted a lot of time worrying. Why am I finding it so difficult? You know, why is it so tough? But it's just because people were not absolutely truthful about their journey. And it's important for you to know that it's going to be difficult. There are times that you will cry. There are times you will wonder, why did I even choose a career in law? There are times that you'll have to make so many sacrifices. You're not sleeping, you're not having any time for yourself. It's normal. In fact, if you're struggling, know that you're probably doing something right. If you're having a free ride, you're probably not putting in your best or not doing, taking on as much as you can. So I wish I had known that when I was younger. If you're struggling, you're probably on the right path. So stick it out. The third thing, and I think I've already said this, but please be fearless. Take on things. I wish I had known this at the beginning of my journey. It wasn't until like year 6 or 7 that I really had that mental shift. You really need to be fearless. Take opportunities. And I think people have said it in different ways, and which goes to the point that it's very important. Take on things, do hard things. You will surprise yourself. You'll never find out the extent of your capabilities. You'll never be able to unearth your talents if you always play it safe. If there's a speaking opportunity, take it on. If there's an opportunity to work on a difficult project, take it on. The worst thing that can happen is death, and you are never going to die because of hard work. So at least that's some comfort for you. The worst thing is it won't work out. You move on, you would have learned a lesson, but please be fearless. And I mean, I'm just saying this because as I'm sitting here, I'm looking right opposite, and I have a big poster on my wall that says be fearless, because that's really what accounted for my transition, from being an okay lawyer to being a fantastic lawyer. It's just being fearless and taking things on. So that's really what I want to leave with everyone. Be fearless.
Thank you so much. And that's so encouraging. Yemisi, have you got anything? I know we've run out, we're running out of time.
I'm going to thank you. I'm going to with the running the risk of sounding like a broken gramophone record, because this word has been said many times, I'm going to repeat it. Network, network, network. If you're a younger lawyer listening to this, I'm going to be advising as if I'm advising my younger self, right? You start the networking early, and I know network has sort of in some circles, at least I know, it has a bad rep, because people just think, oh, networking, they look at it as transactional and all of that. But networking is really about building relationships, and I can go on and on. I actually teach networking, so I can go on and on. I'm going to stop here, but networking is extremely important and has been really, really, really useful for me in my career so far. So I think do not underestimate the power of networking. I think the other thing I would say is just enjoy the journey. Just enjoy the journey. Enjoy being a lawyer. Enjoy building your career, and don't run away from really, really putting in the hard work. Because when you like in a role like mine, and I was talking to someone yesterday who's a young lawyer who is trying to get into development finance. We like lawyers that we can see have worked very, very hard previously, and those years where we all know that law is hard. You work late, you work hard. You're really slugging it away, and you're watching these partners and thinking, how come I'm here? You give me the instructions, you go home, I have to turn it by the next day. Those years that you spend doing that, honestly, I mean, when we see CVs of people who have done the time, it's not we don't think about it too much before we give those chances, because there's going to be a lot of work for you to do, and you'll be doing it in a different level. But we like when we see that you've done it before and you've done it well. So don't escape the process, but enjoy it as you're doing it, because you're going to look back one day and you're going to be thankful that you did it. So just enjoy it as you go along. And I think the other thing, the other thing that I'll say is open your mind. The fact that you're a lawyer doesn't mean you close your ears to anything commercial or anything political or anything tech. I mean, look at, here we're now in the stage where there's AI, open your mind to the world, because everything that you're learning is going to help you to be better. When you're a more senior lawyer and you're looking to transition to other industries or whatever, you want to open your mind so that you're able to connect with people from different industries, and that also helps to build your network. So really open your mind and learn as much as you can, both within and outside your legal practice. So that's everything.
Thank you so much. So useful to hear that. And Felicia, have you got anything to add to that?
I think I have answered this one, but
apologies.
This is the message to the younger self. I think I can always add some more, but I'm sure.
No, I think you did. Thelma, you've answered this one or not?
No, I haven't.
Yes, that's Thelma.
The other panelists have said it all. What I will add, and piggybacking on Yemisi's point, excellence is non-negotiable. You can get all the networks, you can get yourself into the room and all of that, but if you are not excellent at your work, when work is given to you, it has to be reviewed 2-3 times before you get it, then all the other things will not matter. So if you are a young lawyer now starting your practice, put in the time to learn, dedicate time to learning and self-development. That will buy you a lot of goodwill in your firm. It will buy you a lot of goodwill with your clients, and it will take you places, even when you are the one cowering and trying to get into the back, it can push you into the limelight. So do not shy away from the hard work. You need to put that time in. It's very easy to think, in Ghana, a lot of lawyers do law as a second degree. And so by that time, they may have obligations, financial obligations, and so on. So they are more concerned about money, for instance, than maybe the work or the kind of firm they are working in and the kind of transactions or instructions that they are working on. And it can get difficult, but trust me, if you put in the time and you just stick with it, it will pay you dividends much, much more than you could have thought about. And I'd say also the last thing would be just have a dream. Think of yourself like, what kind of lawyer do I want to be? And then work backwards towards that dream that you have, because that would really be the guiding thing for you as you go through your practice.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much all for sharing your knowledge. It's been a remarkable evening. We have over 18 questions in the chat book, and it is extremely late. Shalane, are you there?
I am. Yes, I am. Yeah, we've
got a lot.
We've got quite a few.
Yeah, it's approaching 8 p.m. So I don't know if we just want to maybe answer one, and then we can perhaps communicate with people offline. And
yeah, how are you guys all doing for time? Are you okay to do another 5 minutes just to rattle through these questions? I could just shoot them out, and then a couple of them, and then if you can answer maybe one or two, because there's quite a few.
Is that
okay? If that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, brilliant. So we've got one for Narnia. So someone's asked anonymously about you being burnt out at a stage in your career. How did you ensure being a lawyer was not your only identity, yet get back to the point where you really enjoyed being a lawyer?
I think for me, well, being a lawyer had never been my only identity. Unfortunately for me, I come from a family of lawyers. Everyone is a lawyer, so no one cares whether I'm a lawyer or not. And in fact, when people, when we're all there and, they say counsel, I never turn. Half the time I forget I'm a lawyer. So that at least helps. But I think for me, when I got burnt out, the way I found my way back was finding a specialization that I thoroughly enjoyed, so that it didn't even seem like it was work for me. So I'm a disputes lawyer. I was doing the whole court and everything. But there was a point in time that I really focused on arbitration, and I loved it so much. I enjoyed it so much. So it was finding arbitration really that saved me. It was a different way of doing what I was always doing. I was using the same skills, but it was on an international scale. And I got to travel, I got to network, I got to meet different people, and I was also learning. So I think one of the things that can really help when you feel burnt out, it's finding something. And I'm not saying it should be something outside the law. It can be within the law. It can be, within the area, the general area that you're working in. But you can find a specialization that doesn't make it feel like so much like work anymore. The second thing I did was also reprioritize. I mean, when I felt burnt out, I think that's when I really got to reflect. And then I saw that, number one, I wasn't really getting credit for all the amazing work I was doing. So I needed to be visible. And then, the being fearless also came in. I started, going for opportunities. So I think the blessing in that cloudy period was that I was able to really find myself and focus. Instead of working hard, I think I was working much smarter. And because I worked much smarter, I got ahead much quickly. So I would really recommend that.
Amazing, thank you. I think the final question for all the panelists was from Amy Apenteng Daniels. She said, to all panelists who qualified both in the UK and Ghana and Nigeria, what benefits are there to dual qualifying, and what is the best time to consider getting that second qualification in your career?
So I'll go ahead. I'm dual qualified. For me, I think the best time is when you have the time. And when you have the time is always better at the beginning of your career than in the middle. It's very difficult to take time off work when you are, a mid to senior level lawyer to go and get qualified elsewhere. It works for others, but it's not always that easy. So if you have the opportunity at the beginning of your career to do that, please do it, especially where, you're applying for training contracts and you haven't been able to get one at the very first round, or you haven't been able to get pupillage at the very first round. Don't waste that time. Put that to good use. You could go back home and then seek the dual qualification. Has it helped me? Yes. And I think it's like every other thing, it depends on what you do with it, really. Simply going off and getting dual qualified is not going to change your life, trust me. But what you decide to do with it, then will decide, then we'll let you know whether it's beneficial or not. So for example, for me, I do have a lot of connections with the UK. For example, I'm part of the Africa Committee. I do a lot of things with the LCIA. There are real benefits to me being dual qualified. I think there's some opportunities that would not have opened up for me if I wasn't dual qualified. But that's not simply because I'm dual qualified, but that's because I'm visible. And because people know me, they trust me, and they know that I'm dual qualified. That's why I get those opportunities. So I don't want you to see it as like a, be it and all. I think it really depends on what you do with it. So think clearly about how you want to leverage on that and use that to run with it.
Amazing, thank you so much, Nania. The final question actually was from Anonymous for Belle. What books did you have in your tool house that were very, very inspiring for you?
That was books.
Yes, books.
I think. Oh gosh, why have I forgotten this particular title? It was by Paulo Coelho.
Was it The Alchemist?
It was The Alchemist. It was The Alchemist. I don't know why the title completely went out of my head. I've read The Alchemist a good couple of times, and I found that very, very helpful.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's just the idea of sometimes you're already where you're meant to be, and you may not realize that it might be slightly different, but there are so many different opportunities open to us in and around where we already are if we just open our eyes.
I love that. I love the book as well. Thank you so much for sharing, Belle. Shalane?
Brilliant. That's all the questions that we have time for. I think we will try to get these questions that we haven't been able to ask today directly to the panelists. Unfortunately, time's got away with us. I'll hand it over to you, Stephanie, to close up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Shalane. Thank you so much all for joining us. Apologies for our tech issue in the beginning, but we appreciate you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge. It's been, we just can't express how grateful we are for you sharing your journey. It's going to help each and every one of us, and it's so important that we see, Black powerful women in their careers doing so well. We know it's not easy for you, on a daily basis. It wasn't easy for you to get there, but we're so happy that you're able to share your journey and be so honest about it. It's definitely going to inspire us and give us different ideas in terms of how we can advance ourselves and advance the next generation coming up. So again, thank you so much for your time. So on that note, we're going to close. And I know we have 23 questions in the box, but like we said, we will try and get some of the questions over to the panelists to see if they have time to come back to us with their answers. But again, thank you guys so much. So we're going to close. You can email us at info@bglu.org if you do need help with training contracts, internships, or just, if you're general career advice, please do email us. And again, thank you all so much for joining, and special thank you to the panelists as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
guys. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye, everyone.